So here we have an election. The right wing in the white domestic terrorists did not like the results of this election. So they were determined to overthrow this election. And the black troops then went to the black militia in Louisiana, then went to protect the citadel of democracy, the courthouse. The white domestic terrorists attacked the courthouse and basically burned black folk out of there. And as black folk were surrendering, they were executed. Some were tortured, they were executed. The estimate is about 100 black people were slaughtered.
I'm sorry. The constant contradiction between you're not allowed to have arms, but yet we need you to fight our wars.
Right? And over and over and over. And so one of the things that happened after that slaughter is that Louisiana wasn't about to hold those folks accountable for murder. And so there was a thing called the Enforcement Act, the KKK Act, that the government used, the federal law that the government used to hold the chief murderers accountable. The U.S. Supreme Court gutted that law in the Cruikshank decision, basically saying that the law does not apply to private actors. It only applies to state actors. And so when you're not able to stop these private actors, then that tells these white domestic terrorists that they can run wild because they know that the state is not going to stop them. They know that the state, and so you have this thing where black folks are trying to get their guns because they know that they don't have any protection. But the problem is with anti-blackness, because black is seen as a threat, inherently dangerous, inherently criminal, black folks with guns becomes an exponential threat. And it becomes the excuse. Well, they were armed. It becomes the excuse for slaughter. So it's like damned if you do and damned if you don't. But what this is saying is that Second Amendment does not apply to black folk.
No. And we definitely saw that you clearly point out in the book with the Black Panthers. Like that to me is the most obvious, like recent history where we're like people that are law abiding. And yet that really freaked him out. See, that's how you got gun control, is when black people started walking around with weapons.
Well, I certainly did a good job.
No.
That is what
he sucked.
Well,
so talk a little bit about that, because, this was a group of people that really were educated as to how the system works and what they were doing was lawful and all of it. And yet it didn't even matter.
Right. And so the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. And so I love that full title of their name, because what they were dealing with was the massive police brutality that was happening in the black community. And that there was no entity in government that would step in and stop it, that would hold police accountable for beating up black folk, for shooting black folk, for wrongly arresting black folk and gaining confessions through beatings. And the terror that was in that black community, because the police weren't there to protect and serve. They saw the police basically as an occupying army. And so the Black Panthers stepped in, because they're like, if the system won't defend our communities, then we will. And so they knew Huey Newton was a law student. And so he knew the law. He knew that California was an open carry state. And so he knew the kinds of guns that they could carry. He knew the kinds of guns that they couldn't carry. So they couldn't carry sawed-off shotguns, but they could carry guns. They could carry, revolvers. They could carry pistols. And they knew how to hold the weapons, and they knew how far away from the police they had to be. So they would see a police arresting somebody, and they would roll up on them and watch the arrest happening as a means to stop the beatings that were going on, as a means to stop the shootings that were going on. Well, the cops didn't like it at all, because now you've got these black folk in leather carrying guns out in the open, and it was terrifying the police. And so the police would stop the Black Panthers over and over, to try to arrest them, but they weren't doing anything illegal. They weren't doing anything illegal. And so the police then ran to the state legislature, to Don Mulford, who was a conservative member in the California Assembly, and said, the Panthers are a problem. The Panthers are a problem. We've got to stop them. Every time we try to pull them over and get them on something, we can't arrest them because they're not doing anything illegal. We have to make their tactics illegal. And Mulford was like, oh, I got this. I got this. And he had help from the NRA. So one of the NRA's representatives helped draft the Mulford Act, which was to make the kind of carrying of the guns that the Black Panthers did illegal in California. And Ronald Reagan was like, the moment that legislation hits my desk, I will eagerly sign it. And so you see this thing where we often don't think of conservatives as being about gun control. But in this moment, and also think about this moment. This is toward the end of the civil rights movement, toward the end of that thinking of where whites have control over the Black community. Because again, that anti-Blackness is so strong. And so when that control is loosening, what do? You implement laws to bring further control, because that anti-Blackness is still coursing through. And so you see that the legislature didn't move to try to figure out, how do we stop police brutality? How do we hold police accountable for shooting Black people in the back? You don't get that kind of movement, that kind of legislation. Instead, what you get is, how do we neutralize the Black Panther Party and turn what they are doing that is legal into something that is illegal, into something that is criminal?
So now fast forward to recently.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not allowed to have guns to defend yourself. And you're apparently not allowed to lead protests about not having gun restrictions because of police brutality and because of violence. So what we saw happening in Tennessee with the Justins there, and I saw you talking about this with Amy Goodman, it's just so counter to what we're talking about. So you're not allowed to have weapons, and we're going to put in these gun restrictions. But as soon as Black people start talking about restrictions on guns to curb gun violence, well, we can't have that either.
Right.
It's the complete opposite.
Right. And so one of the things that I wrestle with in the book, and is you think about all of the mass shootings we have had in the United States. And we shake our heads, Sandy Hook, Uvalde, Las Vegas, Aurora, Parkland. And you wonder why, with the slaughter, and sometimes the slaughter of children, why this nation can't move forward. And again, what I argue is that the power of anti-Blackness, the power of the fear of the Black community is what brings that out. So we see it in the Bruen decision, that U.S. Supreme Court decision dealing with the gun control laws that were in New York. And when you read that decision, it reads like this dystopian vision of New York City. So there's a film called Escape from New York.
Of course.
Right. And that,
of course.
Right. And that film is about that New York is where all of the degenerates go, where all of the violent people are. And so you read that, and the decision is like, you're walking down the street and the police can't protect you. They can't protect all 20 million people. But you're walking down the street and you could be raped, you could be beaten, you could be robbed, you could be murdered. And so the next part of that is Charles Bronson's death wish, is that the only thing that can protect you is the gun that you carry. Wow. So begin to think about that. I mean, you are not safe because you're in these cities And these cities are harbingers of death and doom and destruction because that's where Black people live.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.